The great question. Imagine waking up one day to find that every mask you've ever worn has fused to your skin. You go to the mirror, expecting the familiar face you've seen 1,000 times, but instead you see fragments of every role you've played, pieces of the obedient child, the loyal friend, the perfect employee, the charming partner. All of them stitched together into something grotesque and unrecognizable. And here's the most disturbing part. You don't even remember what your real face looks like anymore. Has it been months? Years? Or did you lose sight of it so long ago that you wouldn't recognize it even if it stared back at you? This is the quiet catastrophe most people never speak about, the battle between who you are and who you pretend to be. It begins subtly. A compliment here, a small lie there. Someone praises you for being agreeable, so you silence your real opinion next time. A friend laughs at your joke, so you exaggerate it more next time to keep the attention. Piece by piece, without ever noticing, you construct a version of yourself that feels safe, acceptable, and desirable. And the more others love this version, the more terrified you become of losing it. Because if they only knew the real you, the messy, flawed, insecure, questioning self, would they still stay? Or would they turn away in disappointment? Here's the paradox. The world tells you to be yourself, yet punishes you the moment you reveal too much of your raw truth. Society worships authenticity in theory, but in practice it rewards performance. You are taught to play roles: the confident leader, the selfless parent, the ever-hustling achiever, the friend who always understands. But who are you when the curtain falls, when the applause stops, when no one is watching? Do you even know? Or have you buried that question so deep that it only whispers in your quietest moments, those nights woe? The laughter fades, the notifications stop, and the room grows silent. That's when the doubt creeps in. If everyone loves who I pretend to be, does anyone truly love me at all? You've likely felt it, that hollow ache beneath the applause, that strange emptiness that comes after another social victory, another curated post, another nod of approval. The feeling that something essential is missing, something real. But you shake it off, because who has time to untangle that mess when there are deadlines to meet, expectations to fulfill, and images to maintain? The irony is merciless. The more successful you become at being who you pretend to be, the further you drift from who you really are. It's like chasing a horizon. Every step forward takes you farther from home. And yet, everyone seems to be running the same race. No one questions it, because questioning it would mean slowing down, and slowing down feels like death in a world obsessed with speed, productivity, and validation. But here's the great question, the one you've avoided for years because you fear what it might reveal. What if the life you've built, the reputation you've crafted, the relationships you've nurtured, what if all of it belongs to someone who doesn't even exist? What happens when the mask becomes so convincing that even you believe it? Is that still you? Or have you vanished behind the performance, a ghost haunting your own life? And perhaps the most unsettling question of all, if you stripped it all away, if you removed every layer of pretense, every expectation, every borrowed belief, what would remain? Would you find freedom, or would you find nothing at all? The answer is not simple, because this battle, the battle between who you are and who you pretend to be, runs deeper than personal choices. It's written into the structure of society, wired into the human psyche, shaped by forces older than. You can imagine, this is not a new struggle. Thinkers, philosophers, and psychologists have wrestled with it for centuries, warning that the price of self-betrayal is soul death. And yet, in the age of curated identities and digital applause, the cost has never been higher. The question is no longer abstract, it's immediate, urgent, because every day you live behind the mask, you lose another piece of what makes you real. So before we go deeper, before we uncover why this battle exists and what it's doing to your mind, your relationships, your very sense of self, stop and ask yourself, when was the last time you were truly you? And are you brave enough to remember? The hidden problem. It's psychological, philosophical. Why does this battle even exist? Why is there such a wide canyon between who we are and who we feel we must become? To answer this, you have to step into the dark architecture of the human psyche and the invisible forces that shape it. From the moment you were born, the world began molding you, not into yourself, but into what was acceptable. As a child, you learned very quickly that love was conditional. Smile when they expect it, and you are rewarded with warmth. Cry too loudly or show too much anger, and the warmth vanishes. You internalize this unspoken law. Approval means survival. That law didn't fade with age. It only became more complex. You wore your first masks not out of malice or manipulation, but out of necessity. And soon, those masks hardened into identity. Carl Jung called this social self the persona, a necessary fiction that helps you function in society. It's the face you present to the world, the costume you wear so you can belong. But Jung also warned of its danger. When you confuse the mask for the self, you become alienated from your true nature. The persona becomes a prison. Then there is the shadow, Jung's term for everything you repress, your anger, envy, fears, forbidden desires, and unspoken doubts. You push them down because they don't fit to the role you've been assigned. You hide them so well that you start to believe they're gone. But they're not. They lurk in the basement of your mind, whispering through your actions, shaping your choices in ways you barely notice. You might think you are in control, but in truth, you are negotiating between two tyrants, the persona and the shadow. And every time you betray your authentic self to satisfy one of them, a little more of your soul erodes. This internal conflict is not just personal, it's existential. Philosophers like Sartre and Kierkegaard spoke of this as the anguish of freedom. The terrifying truth is that you are condemned to be free. You have infinite choices, infinite possibilities, and with that comes infinite responsibility. That weight is unbearable for most people. So what do? We run. We run into roles, labels, and pre-packaged identities because they offer certainty in a world that feels chaotic. You choose a mask because it promises safety. It tells you who you are supposed to be, and for a while, that feels like relief. Nietzsche warned about this escape into the herd. He said most people would rather follow comforting illusions than face the raw, terrifying truth of their individuality. He called it slave morality, the tendency to conform, to obey, to shrink from greatness because greatness demands solitude, risk, and the courage to stand apart. And in our time, this tendency has metastasized. We live in an age of hyper-performance, where the persona is not just social, it is digital, global, and relentless. Your curated self isn't just for neighbors and colleagues, it's for strangers, algorithms, and faceless crowds. Every post, every photo, every comment becomes another layer of the mask. You don't just wear the persona, you brand it, market it, optimize it for maximum applause, and the applause feels good, until it doesn't. Because deep down, something in you knows the truth. You are not being loved. The mask is. And what happens when the mask cracks? When you fail to perform, when the applause stops? That is when the terror sets in. You've invested so much in the false self that losing it feels like death. But here's the cruel twist. While you're busy polishing the persona, your authentic self withers in the dark, neglected, forgotten. And then comes the shadow's revenge, explosive outbursts, secret addictions, sudden breakdowns, the gnawing anxiety you can't explain. You think the problem is stress, bad luck, or even depression. But often, it's the suppressed self clawing at the walls of its cage, desperate to breathe. Schopenhauer once wrote that life oscillates between pain and boredom. When you live behind the mask, that oscillation becomes a trap. Pain when the persona fails, boredom when it succeeds. Because no amount of external validation can satisfy the hunger for authenticity. That hunger is primal, spiritual, existential. And yet you ignore it because acknowledging it would mean tearing down the house you've built, the career, the relationships, the entire narrative of your life. So you play along, you keep the mask on, you smile for the camera, you chase the next applause, and with each performance, you move one step further from the person you were meant to become. The question now is not whether this battle exists. It does, and you are living it every day. The real question is, what is the cost of losing it? Because make no mistake, there is a cost, a psychological tax that compounds over time, anxiety, emptiness, a creeping sense of meaninglessness. Viktor Frankl called this existential vacuum, a void that grows when life is lived without true purpose, and no mask, no persona, no amount of likes or applause can fill it. But before we talk about how to fight back, before we explore what it means to reclaim your true self, we need to look at something even more unsettling, the hidden consequences of this silent battle, because it's not just a struggle. It bleeds into your relationships, your work, your mental health, your ability to experience joy. It shapes the very fabric of society. And if you don't see those consequences clearly, you will never understand why this fight is the most important one of your life. The unseen consequences. You think you're managing it well. You think the masks you wear are harmless, that the act of pretending only affects you in small, controllable ways. But the consequences of this silent battle run deeper than most people dare to admit. It does not just shape your personality, it rewires your reality. It begins with something subtle: dissonance. Every time you act against your true nature, your psyche registers the conflict. Cognitive dissonance is not just an abstract concept, it's a physiological event. Your nervous system senses the inconsistency between what you feel and what you express. You smile when you want to scream. You agree when every cell in your body says no. You laugh at jokes that wound your spirit. And so your body becomes a battlefield of contradictions. This constant dissonance breeds stress, chronic stress, the kind that doesn't make headlines but corrodes from within. Over time, it mutates into anxiety, depression, and a vague sense of unworthiness you can't quite name. Why? Because deep down, you know you've betrayed yourself. Not once, not twice, but every single day you choose approval over authenticity, and betrayal, especially self-betrayal, always demands a price. Then there's the relational cost. When you live behind a mask, every relationship becomes conditional. Your friends don't know you, they know the character you play. Your partner loves the script, not the author. And the tragedy is this: you crave intimacy more than anything, but intimacy requires truth, and truth feels dangerous. So you settle for performance. You curate, you edit, you filter. You let people love the fiction because the fiction feels safer. And yet, each time they say, "I love you," a small voice inside whispers, "If they knew the real me, would they still stay?" That whisper becomes a roar in your loneliest moments. It gnaws at you, even when you're surrounded by people, even when your life looks perfect from the outside. It's why so many successful, admired, and socially adored individuals confess to feeling hollow, disconnected, unseen. They are trapped in a paradox. Everyone knows them, yet no one truly knows them. And then comes the societal cost. When millions of individuals wear masks, the entire culture becomes a masquerade. Authenticity becomes rare, and performance becomes the norm. Social media accelerates this decay, turning life into a theater where applause is currency. You don't share to express, you share to impress. You don't live to experience, you live to be seen experiencing. And in this endless play, truth becomes irrelevant. What matters is optics, perception, branding. But what happens when truth dies? When everyone hides behind curated identities, genuine connection suffocates. Communities fracture. Loneliness becomes an epidemic. And it has. Look at the data. We are more connected than ever, yet more isolated than any generation before us. Rates of depression and anxiety soar, not because life is objectively harder, but because living a lie, even a beautiful, well-crafted lie, is spiritually exhausting. Here's the bitter irony. In trying to be accepted, you create the very thing you fear most: alienation. Because the more you hide your authentic self, the less anyone can truly reach you. And this alienation doesn't stop with relationships. It infiltrates your work. When your career is built on a persona, success feels hollow. You reach the top of the ladder only to realize it was leaning against the wrong wall. You achieve, you win, you conquer. Yet inside, the voice whispers, "This is not me. None of this is me." That realization is not just sad. It's lethal. It's what drives midlife crises, existential breakdowns, and sudden, inexplicable decisions that shock everyone around you. The marriage that seemed perfect ends overnight. The executive walks away from millions to live in a cabin. The influencer deletes everything and disappears. These are not random acts of rebellion, they are desperate attempts to reclaim a self that has been buried alive. But the deepest consequence of all, the one that terrifies you even if you can't name it, is spiritual decay. Because when you live as a mask long enough, you forget there was ever anything beneath it. You stop hearing the whispers of your authentic self. You stop dreaming the dreams that once set your soul on fire. You become efficient, productive, acceptable, and empty. You are no longer living, you are merely performing existence. This is the unseen catastrophe, a world full of human beings who have mastered the art of pretending while starving for meaning. And the cruelest part? You can't buy your way out. No amount of success, beauty, or social approval will fix the fracture. In fact, the more you have, the worse it gets, because every new achievement strengthens the mask and weakens the self. So here is the question you can no longer afford to ignore. How long will you keep paying this price? How many years will you trade for applause? How many friendships will you sacrifice to performance? How much of your life will you spend building a version of you that was never real? Because the truth is, this isn't just a phase. It's not harmless. It's not something that will magically resolve with time. The longer you live divided, the harder it becomes to return. But return you must, if you want to live, truly live, before time runs out. The good news? There is a way back. A way to strip the mask, to silence the lies, to reclaim the raw, unedited version of you. But it is not easy. It demands courage most people never find. It demands rebellion, not against society, but against the false self you've worshipped for so long. And that rebellion begins now, the rebellion, how to break free. So how do you begin dismantling a mask that has been welded to your soul for decades? How do you peel away layers of pretense without tearing yourself apart? The answer begins with an uncomfortable truth. You cannot heal what you refuse to face. The first act of rebellion is radical honesty, brutal, unfiltered honesty with yourself. This sounds simple, but it is the hardest thing you will ever do, because honesty threatens the entire structure you've built. It risks the approval you've been conditioned to crave. It forces you to ask questions that could collapse the life you've curated. But if you want freedom, you must begin here. Jung warned, one does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. That darkness is the shadow you've denied, the anger you swallowed, the desires you condemned, the dreams you abandoned for safety. To break free, you must stop running from your shadow and invite it to the table. Look at the parts of yourself you've exiled. Listen to the voice you silenced years ago because it didn't fit the script. Ask yourself, what am I pretending not to feel? What truth have I buried because it scared me? These questions are not philosophical games. They are dynamite. They will blow open the doors you've kept locked for a lifetime. And yes, it will hurt, but the pain of truth is cleaner than the rot of self-betrayal. The second act of rebellion is the destruction of illusion. Begin small. Notice where you perform. Social media is a good place to start. Ask yourself, why am I posting this? To express or to impress? To share or to seek applause? Then, experiment with authenticity. Share something unpolished. Speak an opinion you've been afraid to voice. You will feel naked, exposed, but that is the first breath of freedom. Sartre called this the vertigo of existence, the dizzying sense of standing at the edge of your own freedom. Most people retreat from that edge. Don't. Lean in. The third act of rebellion is solitude. You cannot hear your own voice in a room full of applause. You need silence. You need space to detox from the noise of expectation. Turn off the feed. Step away from the stage. Sit with yourself alone, without distraction. At first you will feel restless, even panicked. That's withdrawal. You've been addicted to validation for so long that stillness feels like death. But stay there. Let the discomfort burn through you. On the other side is clarity. In solitude, you begin to remember. You remember what you loved before the world told you what was worthy. You remember the dreams that felt too wild, too impractical, too you. You remember who you were before the masks. And then comes the most terrifying step of all, choice. Because once you see the truth, you can no longer pretend. You must decide, do I continue the performance or do I start living the raw, unfiltered version of my life? This choice is where most people break. They see the cage but stay inside because the door, though open, leads into uncertainty. It leads into judgment, rejection, loss, and you will face all of these. People will not celebrate your rebellion. Some will call you selfish. Others will feel betrayed because they fell in love with the character, not the author. You will lose friends. You may lose status, comfort, opportunities. But here is the question you must hold like fire. What is worth more? Applause for a lie or peace for the truth? Viktor Frankl said that man's ultimate freedom is the ability to choose his attitude even in the harshest conditions. Your harshest condition is not a prison cell. It is the prison of pretense. And freedom, real freedom, demands sacrifice. But it also brings rewards you've forgotten exist. When you strip the mask, you rediscover intimacy. The kind that makes you feel seen, not for the role you play, but for the soul you are. You rediscover purpose, the kind that is not borrowed from a trend or a script, but born from the depths of your being. You rediscover joy, the quiet, uncurated joy of living without the constant burden of performance. And slowly, as you live this way, you begin to notice something extraordinary. The people who stay, the ones who love you after the masks are gone, are rare, but they are real. And real connection is worth more than 1,000 standing ovations. The rebellion, then, is not a single act. It is a way of being. It is choosing truth over image, depth over optics, authenticity over applause. It is refusing to sell your soul for likes, validation, or safety. It is saying every single day, I will not die as a stranger to myself, because that is the ultimate tragedy, not failure, not poverty, not rejection, but to live an entire life as someone you never truly were. So ask yourself now, will you keep playing the role, bowing to the expectations, hiding behind the mask, or will you burn the script and begin again? The choice is yours, but time is not infinite, and every day you hesitate, the mask grows tighter. The ultimate truth, the final, most powerful realization. And now we arrive at the question that lingers like a shadow behind everything we've explored. Who are you when the masks are gone? This is the question that terrifies even the bravest souls, because it demands not just honesty, but the death of illusions. For so long, you have believed the mask was you. You invested in it, protected it, polished it until it shined. And now, here you are, standing in front of a mirror stripped bare. No applause, no filters, no borrowed scripts, just you. But who is that? The truth, and this is the part no one tells you, is that the authentic self is not something you discover like a lost treasure chest. It is not hiding in a cave, waiting to be found. The authentic self is something you create, moment by moment, choice by choice. That is the ultimate realization. You are not a fixed identity. You are a living process. Sartre was right. Existence precedes essence. You were not born with a predetermined self waiting to be unveiled. You were born with the terrifying freedom to shape yourself, and that freedom is both a gift and a curse, because it means there is no final answer, no ultimate version of you etched in stone. There is only the raw clay and the hands, your hands, molding it into form. For years you let others mold it, parents, teachers, lovers, bosses, society. They sculpted their expectations into your skin until you mistook their fingerprints for your own. But now you see the truth. The mask was never the enemy. The mask was a teacher. It showed you what happens when you abandon the creative responsibility of your own life. It taught you that living by default is the slowest kind of death. And now you are awake. That awakening is not comfortable. It burns. It burns because it annihilates the lie of permanence. It tells you, you are free. You are terrifyingly free. And with that freedom comes the weight of authorship. What will you do with it? Will you keep performing, hoping the applause will drown out the silence inside? Or will you begin the sacred, excruciating work of writing your own script? This realization will change how you see everything. Your relationships? They are no longer about clinging to people who validate your mask. They are about finding souls who can stand in the fire of your becoming. Your work. It is no longer about impressing, achieving, performing. It becomes an expression of essence, not a substitute for it. Your life? It is no longer a stage, it becomes a canvas. But here's the paradox. When you finally embrace your freedom, when you stop pretending and start creating, you also discover something even deeper, a quiet center that was always there, beneath all the noise. Call it soul, call it being, call it the eternal observer. It does not matter what name you give it. What matters is that you feel it, that silent core untouched by performance, uncorrupted by masks. You didn't notice it before because you were too busy performing life instead of living it. But now, in the stillness after the fire, you feel it. And with that comes peace. Not the fragile peace of approval that shatters with one rejection, but the indestructible peace of alignment, of being whole, of living as someone who no longer needs to lie to survive. That is the freedom Nietzsche spoke of. Not the freedom to do whatever you want, but the freedom to become who you truly are. And that is not given, it is earned, every day, through choices that hurt, through losses that scar, through courage that feels like madness. But it is worth it. Because at the end of your life, when you look back, the question will not be, did they approve of me? It will be, did I live as me? Not the mask, not the script, not the hollow echo of other people's expectations. Me. And if you can answer that with even a whisper of yes, then you will have won the only battle that ever truly mattered. So let this be the truth you carry from this moment on. The war between who you are and who you pretend to be is the defining struggle of human existence. Most will lose it quietly. Some will never even know they were fighting. But a rare few, the rebels, the seekers, the souls who dare to burn the script, will win, and their lives will not just be lived, they will be authored. So ask yourself now, for the last time, the question that changes everything. When the curtain falls, when the applause dies, when the lights go out, will the person left standing on that stage finally, mercifully, be you?